In this video today, I want to show how you can go from like this to this. I want to get into, on request by a few people, how to quickly mix. So I'll explain what I'm about to do and why, and as I'm going through this process, it shouldn't take too long. And the idea here, just to caveat what we're about to do, isn't to create a professional market commercial ready mix that you're going to make millions from. For me as a composer, as a songwriter, as a guitar player, as a lover of technology, and as a kind of hobbyist like this, you need to be able to get your basic tracks into a state where it's going to inspire you to continue to make them or produce them so they turn into full tracks as you had imagined. And you've got to have a vision for what you want to do, because in your head you might have a riff or an idea. And in my last video where I mentioned getting it from a voice note into a breakdown, you've got to understand what the next steps look like. But I want to go through a bit of EQ, a bit of compression, a bit of limiting, balancing, the levels, the panning, things like that, so that when it comes to putting your track together, for me, essentially, this track is like at the point now I'll decide whether it's a keeper or not. So this time spent mixing, when I come back to it and listen to the tracks in Studio One's kind of folder, like all my projects, I decide, okay, I still like the sound of that, because when you listen to this, it's very lackluster. It doesn't give you an idea what's going on. It's not very interesting. But when I turn this into something, we might be like, oh, actually, that's got some power behind it. So without further ado, I'm going to start a timer on my phone at the end of this and see how long it takes. Okay, so let's start the mixing process. So we've got a few tracks. I've got a guitar left, and I've labelled them accordingly so I can reference them easily. So guitar left, guitar right, drum track. Let's pull the bass up just so it's right next to it. So we've got guitar left, guitar right, bass, a drum track, and some post stuff, some snare bombs and some synth and whatnot. Okay, so I've got a section of the track that I'm looping, because I want to make decisions based on the same section. If I keep letting it progress through the section, the dynamics are going to change the track. So I want to hear, like, there's a bit here where it's a bit slower, a bit more staccato, a bit more bits going on and off, stops, starts, there's some syncopation in there again as well, and there's some driven pieces here where it's pummeling kind of bits going on. You can see from the WAV track there, it's pretty consistent. There's no gaps there, whereas this bit there are gaps in the bass. So there's different dynamics throughout, you can see as the track develops. So let's get on with this. So I'll start the clock, let's start that, reset it, and start now. So now let's get to what we're doing. So you can see already, if I play this back, you can see my master fader is already clipping. So I'm going to pull that down around about 10 dBs, thereabouts. You can adjust this afterwards, it doesn't matter, but it already stops us from clipping going into it. And that's what we want to do. First of all, right, guitars. Guitars are both down the centre, as you can see here. Let me show you there. Both guitars are both in the centre. You don't want that. Clearly, with any modern production, unless you really don't for some artistic reason, let's get those tracks out of the way. Right, already, we've got a completely different track there. Right, so the drums are quite quiet in the mix, and because it's a MIDI drum program, velocity-wise, that will depend on a lot of stuff, but I've got a preset I use this, so let's pull the guitars back. Let's pull them back 3 dBs. Okay, so the odd 1, 1.2, 1.5 and that, it's not going to make too much of a difference, so just go in and make those choices straight early on. So we pulled them back 3 dBs, okay. So now the bass and the drums should start picking through, so I'm going to get my glasses on as we get to work. All right, so let's listen to this again. Okay, so you've started to hear the guitars and the bass mixed. The levels are coming, right? But I want to hear the drums in a way that's favourable, that kind of sounds punchy and full. So I'm going to put my usual Shadow Hills compressor on, available in I think it's Plugin Boutique, and UAD do a version of it as well. Or if you're lucky enough to have the hardware version, brilliant to you, power to you. So I've got a drum preset here, so I'm not going to look when it's clipping or it's how much compression's going on. So. Right, snare's popping through that already now. Bass is okay. Okay, so I'm not going to do any more on that at this stage, but what I will say is that I'm already starting to feel that the levels, it needs squishing a bit, so I'm just going to put a limiter on the master. But I'm going to put Pro L2 on there, just to get some, because we pulled it back 10 dBs, let's get some more level back in. So I'm just going to go for a loud preset, naturally aggressive there, just going to pick it up. I don't care how much CPU, we've got tons of room there. I'm just get all these trimmings in early on so that it does sound good. So let's start squishing it a bit, or let's start limiting it. So let's pull it up. Okay, so we've got some levels there that sound a bit more realistic. Okay, so what I'm also going to do on the master there, on the master fader, is I'm going to put in the same plugin, the Shadow Hills compressor, and I'm going to, what we start doing, you see, this is almost like top-down mixing, I think people call it. So I'm going to put my particular mastering, or mixing, mastering, whatever to call it, default in. So what I want that to be doing is knocking 1 or 2 dBs off the top. So I'm going to leave it as it is and start rebalancing the mix. So that's going to squish it a bit. Okay, so my main next level to sort out is the bass guitar. So we're not looking to do these in isolation, remember. There's no point in listening to it and leveling it, because you want to hear it how it sounds in the mix. So I'm going to pull it down a bit. So this is a bass, down here. Okay, so I pulled the main volume back, but what I want to do actually is I want to compress that too, because despite using the ToneMaster Pro and using the compressor in it, again, I want to make sure, I don't know what happened there, I want to make sure that it's compressed again. We don't want to have spikes coming through and just causing random volume changes in the mix. Okay, so now we've compressed it, I'm going to now limit it. I'm going to use Ozone's vintage limiter. So I've got on Ozone limiter, vintage limiter. I'm going to pull that in. What I'm going to do is pick a gentle smooth tube. That'll do it. Let's do that. Let's pull the character up a bit, and let's just gain match it, because we've already compressed it. I'm now going to limit it. Okay, I'm going to put true peaks on. I'm going to pull it down until I start seeing 1 or 2 dBs of limiting. That's what I'm going to do basically. See at the bottom that little spike there? That's the amount of limiting that's just started. So let's do that again. And even though I've gain matched it, it does start to sound a little louder. So we ungain match it. It's loud as hell. So now I'm going to put that back in the mix, and then I'm going to bring up the volume of the bass. Now it's leveled and compressed, so we know what it actually sounds like in the mix. Okay, so we're getting there. So let's turn these plugins off. Back on. Okay, so the next step I'd probably do is go to the guitars and start making some EQ decisions. Okay, so rather than EQ them on their own, so I could put an EQ on here, for example. Let's put Pro Q on again. It seems to be my go-to, Pro Q3. And then I would do that and do that there. There's a couple of reasons, because you might want to change 1 or 2, but just for ease of use. What I'm going to do is send these. So if you look here, so if I put my output of the track is I've sent it to a guitar bus, which is there. So if you were to create a new bus, so add a bus channel, and if I was to call that guitar bus 2, okay, I could then send this to guitar bus 2. Okay, so any of the work that we do is going to be there. So rather than EQ it twice, I'll just put an EQ on there, and the same for any processing, because it goes for the same source and the same plugin. So let's get Pro Q3 up again, and let's make some EQ decisions on the guitar, because the guitar is what occupies a lot of the spectrum, or the sonic range of the mix. The guitar's being a mid-range instrument. You can see as we go up now, a lot of mid-range here, not too much low, not an incredible amount of high. So there's going to be 2 reasons why I'm going to make some EQ decisions. I'm just going to pull this back as we start building up, so we don't unnecessarily hog resources, certainly during this live mixing stage. When we bounce out, we might want to keep everything to linear and max and all the way in. Okay, so a couple of reasons to make EQ decisions. 1, it will be to make it sound better, but 2 is also to create more headroom later on. So if this guitar, both of these guitars, shall we say, on their own are quite bass heavy, as far as guitar's concerned, because we're in drop G. Okay, but we've got the bass guitar doing its bit too. So you can't hear the bass as prominently as we'd like yet, and that's probably because the guitars are operating, occupying a fair amount of that space too. So let's go for reason number 2 first. Let's create some headroom in the mix, because if we've got low frequency, see this here, whilst you can't hear too much of it, it exists. So whether it's way back at the minus 60, 70 levels, we want to get rid of it. So as you see a lot of people doing, you're going to low cut and you're going to high pass. So we're just going to do that, and there's no specific number. I'm going to do this on its own, so I hear how it affects the tone of the guitar. So I've soloing that. So if we went that far, clearly that's affecting the tone. Go back to about here. Very little going on, so I'm going to cut it about there. Same with the high. I'm going to go for a high cut. So at the minute you can't hear it affect anything. Bit of fizz there. As you can see, it drops off really high around about there. And where's that? That's about nearly 7,000, 7.5. So all this nonsense at around, you can see there, around minus 60, 70 dBs, we don't care. So I'm quite confident I can scrape that off around there. But I do want to hear what it does to the mix itself. So if I take this one back off, a bit more presence there, but you know, so be it. It's not going to matter in mix. You can have your cymbals and your vocals stuff. Right, so mid-range or low mids and the mud, as it were. So you can do all kinds of things. You can isolate and solo it. But what I'm going to do is going to put this back in the mix now. So I've done the bits that add the headroom. You can see the stuff over here that doesn't really matter. But what I'm going to do now is add it back into the mix, and I'm going to adjust the guitars in the mix. So let's go back to here. So it does help if you know roughly what you get from each kind of area, but I'm hunting for that kind of honk. So I'm not going to deliberately pick it, I'm just going to do when it sounds good. Put it back in. See that? I want it to sound natural, not just massively cut. So that's what we've removed. Okay, so at the minute that'll do. So if we take the EQ off, that's quite messy. Put it back in. Okay, so top end as well, there's going to need to be get rid of some of this. If we again hunt for this, there's always some scratch up here. So what I'm not going to do is do the old crate. Let's make it bigger so you can see what we're going to do. So let's make that decision on that particular bit. So I'm going to tighten the Q a bit. I don't want it to go too wide. So we've got to make sure it sounds better with it in. Quite scratch. Pull it back out. Maybe a bit too much. Widen it a little. Okay, and you can see there's a peak that's normally problematic in guitars as well, particularly high gain. Is this right? It's probably about 700, I'd imagine there. So what are we on? 693, yeah, it is normally about the same sort of area. Just going to get quite a reasonably tight peak there and get rid of some of that. Maybe not as low. Let's get rid of the drum for a second. If we listen to that's that sonar kind of tone. Okay, so we take the EQ off. That's the tone before. Okay, let's hear it in the mix. Turn it off. Okay, really quite, it's loose and muddy. Okay, so let's do some more. So we've got the guitars in a rough place now. So are they at the right level? So I'm going to pull the whole mix to a point now where it's loud enough. So in the room, I've got my speakers on here, but you know, is it loud enough? So what I could do is pull up something like Insight, which is from Ozone, and it can show me my levels. So I'm just going to have a quick nosy at that and see if we're in a ballpark level. Again, we're just roughing this. We don't need to know. We don't even know if it's going to be a keeper track yet. So if we look at integrated loudness, a momentary of about -9. You know, let's give it a bit of a nudge. Okay, so there's one more plugin I'd probably put on the master there, which is a bit of saturation, the HG2MS from Black Box Audio. Okay, so let's pull it up so we can see. So I'd put that probably before my limiter, but after my compressor. So I've got some a preset that I'm going to basically affect the mid and side separately. So in the mid, I'm affecting a mono boost that you can see in here, and if I solo that, okay, on the side, that area there. So on the mids, what I've done is this. So that is around, what's our frequency? 185 hertz. That's the 196. So it's not the low, but it's kind of low mids. It would give it a bit of a nudge. Okay, and the Q will depend on how much of that affects. You can see the notch there, and on the sides, what you can hear there. Okay, the side frequency is 8 1.7, but I've got quite a wide EQ on that again, so that's affecting that particular frequency. So I'm going to put that back in case I've nudged any of it. Okay, so that sounds pretty damn big now, so it's probably going to be clipping the limit. So let's pull the limiter back a bit. So let's turn this black box off. Okay, the saturation, the low end and thump and mid sides are coming. Okay, so I want to get some, you can see my drums are coming into the red, they're clipping there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull them down, but not in a way that you might think. So we are going to level them, but I'm going to put in a clipper, K-Clip by Kazrog Audio, absolutely amazing plugin. What I'm going to do is just play this through, and what I'm going to do is going to wet the amount of clipping. So what you can do, all you want to hear is the amount that you are clipped. So I'm going to clip it to the point where it just starts to be audible here, and then put it back in and see if it has affected it. So you can see at the minute it's currently clipping an amount. So now that I've linked them together, I just pull it so you start seeing clipping. So if I go all that, it's clipping the whole signal, that's clipping none of it. So we'll pull it down a little. You can hear those bits coming through. And then we'll soften it a bit so it's not as crispy. And how much have we saved there? We've saved about 3, well, that's probably a bit hard, 10 dBs. Let's pull it back a bit. We don't want the kick drum hitting it too. It's only the snare tops and things, so we've got about 6 dBs out of that. So let's put it back in. Does it sound any different? Okay, probably not. So if we look at the levels here again now, they're soloed. I'll turn this plugin off. K-Clip is now off. And it's shooting into the red there, you see? Okay, and I'll play that same section with the K-Clip on, and he probably won't do that now. One would hope not. Okay, nowhere near it. So we've artificially saved some headroom. Okay, so that's what we did with the EQ, and that's what we did with the clipper. Let's put that before the compressor though. So I'm going to pull the, well, let's leave it after, let's do the magic after, so there we go. Right, let's pull the drums down a bit, they're a tad loud. Okay, -2, let's get some, the drums sound too dry to me, so let's quickly get a bit of Valhalla Room Verb on. Okay, Valhalla Verb. Was that the right one? Yeah, Room. Okay, so pull her up. I've got a default on the one here. I'm just going to change the amount of the mix that starts to sound good. So you can do this in solo. I would advise against that. Just start doing it so it sounds good to you in the room. So all the way off. Can't really hear it here. It's the snares that normally give it away. I don't want it to sound just like echoey and weird. Okay, low but's a bit too low. I don't want to hear the kick drum so much in that. Okay, put it off. Snares. It's the snares read on here. Okay, so we've got a bit of Verb on there. Good. So we're making that sound a bit better. So what I will also do is quickly throw Soothe on there, because the cymbals, I could start pulling the cymbal levels down and things, but it isn't the levels necessarily that were a problem. It is the certain frequencies. So on the Soothe 2, there is a preset under drums, and it's cymbal smooth. Smooth the cymbals out. That's what I do. Okay, so you can see cymbal smooth. I'm using cymbals on the kit. So if we look at Superior Drummer, got the cymbal action going on there. And you can see there's a fair amount of taming going on. Still a bit too much for this. I'm going to nip it in a bit more. Go all the way. Muddy as hell. That's what they're like on their own. Okay, that starts to sound a bit more normal. Okay, so let's remind ourselves where we were. So this was a mix on its own. Obviously it's louder, but the weight and authority of a lot of those bits of these tricks and things we've done are quite significant. So I'm going to put an EQ on the overall mix as well. So let's do that. Let's put FabFilter Pro Q on there. Again, you can see it's a one of choice. So I've got a preset that I've made for myself. My most recent one is probably, was it Master November 25. So we're in 26 now. I'll probably do a revisit. But, you know, it's just getting it so it sounds roughly good. So we've got a low cut there. So let's listen to what these particular bits do. So, see, I can feel that through my speakers. We've got quite large added monitors in my room. There's a bit of thump there. But on most listening systems, you won't notice that. Okay, so that's what we've done there. Top end, 18,000. we've scratched them off, or I can barely feel that presence at all. If you had your speakers loud enough, you might start to perceive it. Okay, some harshness. We've got rid of some of that. Okay, some mids there, and high mids. 1.6 to 2 generally is a bit of a problematic area, because a lot of instruments have that percussive string kind of hitting noise going on. Slight other notch there. Again, bit of a resonant frequency. And just be careful that when you do isolate them, they'll always sound a bit strange. But that 700 that we picked off on the guitars earlier on, again, in the mix, it's still building up a little bit, so I generally knock it back a tad. Some low mids again here. This one has the most impact on the mix generally, along with this one. So put that out. And then put it back in. And this one. It's hard not to hear that now. Okay, so let's play it without the EQ. Okay, it's still quite individual on its own and just sharp and crunchy. And put this EQ back in. Okay, so might want to boost the levels of it again now, but I'm not going to do that through an limiter. So we're close to making this a mix that we could be happy with. But with modern metal productions, with a lot of kick drum and a lot of bass, so where's our bass track? Bass is here. What I'll do is, you hear a lot of people talking about sidechain compression with your kick drum and your bass guitar, but I'm going to use an easy method of achieving the same thing. So from Neutron, whether you've got Neutron 4, 5, whatever, put this right at the start of the chain before any processing. You just want it to do its thing. So I want to duck the bass guitar when the kick drum is on. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up Neutron. Okay, so I'm going to go for a preset, bass and kick. Again, I'm not trying to make this overcomplicated. We don't want the whole band to be done. We just want an area where the kick drum things are going to be. So we need to tell it what to look for. So this is currently on the bass guitar. Unmask is on that. You want to tell it to look for the kick drum on Superior Drummer, which for me is their drum. So click the track, and if we confirm there, it's against that track. Okay, so this is going to be looking for when the kick drum hits, duck the bass. So this is this particular default already, and I'm only going to nudge it a tad. You can see already it's ducking quite a lot there, and for me the kick drum I want to keep on its own is not around 277. So we start off here. I'm going to pull it. You can see the peak here, that big peak in the scope there. I want it just to the other side where it's dropped off. It's got 30-40 dB, so I don't want to affect the whole signal, I just want that. So how much? Pull it back, it affects nothing. All the way in, it does all of it. It started at 20. I think if you look at the curve, that's a significant amount of ducking. I want to go a little less than it's suggesting. The amount of it, how quick it does it. I don't want it to be as sharp and as quick. Let's add another millisecond maybe. Okay, so now when we've got the kick drum and the bass together, we're going to get the bass guitar ducking so that the kick drum, what you might do if you didn't do this was artificially raise the level of the kick drum or the drums as a whole. So if we put them on their own, so every time this spike is here, the kick drum is in, and it's ducking the bass guitar this area. So if I turn that off, so the bass guitar is constantly throughout, which sounds nice and creamy, but you want the clarity of the kick drum. Put it off. Okay, good, right. So that also will create more room in the mix as well. So we're getting there. So what have we got? Guitars. So what have we done then? So guitars, because there's some punchy stuff in the guitars, what I would probably do next is put a multi-band compressor for the chugs. And we're close to being at a point where let's just move on. So whether you put it before or after, it's up to you. I'm going to put it before so we don't get the EQ getting slammed before it even comes in. So let's look at that. And it's only going to be a certain mark. So I want around, let's look at chug. Okay, but currently that's too much. So if we look at this, every time there's a chug it caps it. So let's oversample the hell out of this, put it on linear for now. And okay, so normal playing is fine, but when we go to chuggy stuff, like here, it's doing what it's supposed to, but it's too much. So I'm going to lessen the amount that it can do it. So if you look on the side there, that's about 3 dB. So from doing nothing to knocking 3 dBs off both guitars, it's going to open a lot of space in the mix. So attack, I want it to do it straight away, or almost straight away, but I want it releasing after the chug is finished. pull the range down a tad. So it shouldn't, we don't really want it happening here. So let's slow this down so that it doesn't do it during there. Okay, let's go back to the chugs. So it's still working there, but not during there, which is what we want. So let's put that back in the mix. Okay, so guitars almost treated. Bass guitar, what have we done? Unmasked, compressed, and limited as well. Drums, we've added compressing, clipping. We've put Soothe on the end to remove the harshness of the cymbals, and we put a reverb. Okay, so as far as the mix goes, it's getting close to, if I crank this in my room. Okay, so I would say if you have all those tools like an EQ, compressor, limiter, reverbs, and clippers and things like that, you're at a point now where you might think, sounds alright, it's got some, you can imagine doing your vocals over it. Okay, but as a Brucey bonus, what I will tend to do now is make the mix a little bit further. So I won't even consider, and I might be alone in this respect, I won't consider doing vocals until I've got the energy. When I put a set of headphones on, it sounds like it's going to do its job. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up Ozone from iZotope. So I have this, and I'm going to let the AI feature do its thing. As you can see, I've done a lot of steps already that are judged by myself and not by any other means. So let's put Ozone on. And I've got a trick I'm going to do shortly after this, and I'll show you why I'm using Ozone because of that. So let's get rid of Insight for the minute. We don't really care because Ozone's intelligent. It's going to do its stuff. So we've made most of the mixing decisions ourselves. So let's put it on a loud portion of the track. So we want it to make some decisions based on where all the most of the track is happening. So what I'm going to do is put this AI on. I'm just going to go learn it. So if you get any volume spikes, apologies at your end. It's going to make some decisions, and I'm going to probably tell it yes or no, or adjust a few of them. Okay, so it's picked rock, which is what we want. Let's look at the EQ. So it's taken a massive cut on the low end. I would probably pull it back. Okay, sounds alright. Impact, what's it done? Fine. Image I want off because it tends to spread the mix a bit too much. It's making some decisions to make the mix clearer. Stability wise, I don't want it messing around the low end too much. I hear a lot of mixes I find it's too thin. But whatever it does advise, I want to knock it up a bit. So it's obviously made that decision for a reason. And I'm saying this loosely just to make this process quick, but I won't invest in it all the way. Down EQ, again, what's that one? That's around, so that was, about 1k. Alright, so maximizer, what it's done, let's learn the input gain again, based on the changes I just made to its processing. Okay, so it's made very little change to the mix there, but there's another quick thing I'm going to do, and this is the dynamics aspect of this particular plugin, Ozone. So there's a plugin called Tonal Balance Control 2, and if you pull that up, and I've basically matched all the bands in here, you can see, so the lows, the mids, the high mids, and the highs themselves. So when you pull up, come on. There it is. When you pull up the dynamic module, there you can see there's all these bands. Okay, so what I've done is pull this one up. You can see the bands that are there, and each one of those bands, if I keep this plugin in, corresponds to bands on this. Okay, so if I was to put that under there, imagine that they are lined up with each other. Frequency-wise, they are. Take my word for it. I don't want it messing with the low end. I just want to tame the parts of the frequency spectrum that are what makes something pleasing or not. And for me, generally, that's the high mids around here. So I'm going to turn it off, and then I'm going to show you. So you can see what it thinks our mix is doing. Lows are a bit high, but it's a nice and thick genre deliberately. Low mids, scooped it. It's the sound. Highs, almost there. So if I listen to this back now, because we've lost some level, because it's made a decision on the maximizer, but what I'm going to do is, I'm going to push the limiter a bit harder. Okay, and then I'm going to get the maximizer to relearn, so it knows where that new input is. Okay, in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it back because it's decided it's not applying any gain. So I don't want the FabFilter Pro L to be making all the heavy lifting. Let's try that again, so you'll see that Ozone will now push its maximizer up harder. Okay, good. So it still sounds pretty quiet compared to what we had initially, but that's fine. It's about making the mix sound good, not necessarily how our ears perceive it as being loud. But we can check the loudness of it now. Let's just see where we are at. So level-wise, it's actually at -6. So we'll try to turn mine back up in the room. So integrated -7, -8. So levels are actually spot on. So I made some adjustments there, and because my ears didn't like it, you've got to be careful to check what the reference level is. So what I'm going to do with this Dynamics module is I'm going to adjust at this particular frequency band, that one, okay, until I find the mix pleasing to me. So this is where you make artistic decisions yourself. So it's mainly going to be around the guitars and the cymbals and whatnot, and if you had vocals, that too. So let's just go about that. So I'm going to put this plug-in in, and we're going to look at the frequency range it captures. So it starts off there. So to me it sounds a bit harsh still, so I'm going to start pulling this particular area back. So that's we've lost too much. That's quite sharp still. I'm starting to hear a change. To me that's where it starts to feel a bit more balanced, but we've got too much bass guitar now, so I'm going to pull them back. So let's pull the bass guitar back, and this is going to start balancing the headroom, and we're close to being done. A bit more bass guitar. Okay, so we're saving about 2 beats there, so we turn it off. You hear how sharp that feels now. Put it back in. Give it a bit back. And because we've made a change to that area of the frequency spectrum, which is quite heavy, let's let the maximizer do its job again. So it was 1.4, we've gained a bit more headroom, 2.2. Okay, so I would say we're about there. So if we turn all of this nonsense off, so we go to how it was. I'll pull the fader up to let you know how it was. Okay, let's pull it back to where we were, -5.6. That was a rough decision we made. And let's put the plugins back in. So the separation between the bass, the guitars, the drums, it's all there. We're at a point now, you're in the room, you can feel what's going on, and you can probably turn this into something you'd want to decide to whether you want to make anything further still with. So that's taken about 31 minutes. Okay, quite a long one as a video for YouTube. However, half an hour, and we're at the point now where we think, let's save this and move on. So hopefully this has been useful to highlight and show a few of the tricks, or just uncover some of the steps that you might make. They're not necessarily tricks. So again, this is a standard part of the process that I do, record, and maybe the next day come into it and do this. But you've got to understand that when you're composing, that when you go from how it sounded at the start to how it's going to sound now, you've got to have that vision to think your guitar tone in the room versus the mix as a whole, and the whole thing with everyone in the room playing it back at stage volumes and stuff. It's going to be completely different. So you've got to have a bit of imagination. But, you know, thanks for joining me again, and look forward to the next video.